Keep pushing that boulder to the top of the hill. Welcome one and all to Suckville.
Extraordinary stories from ordinary humans? Yes, please. This is Live from Suckville. I'm your host, Silva Florence, an expat writer, cyclist, and podcaster, currently laid up in Suckville after becoming suddenly unemployed. They say that you don't know what you have until it's gone. And that's a very human way of looking at things, because a lot of us, I think, are so focused on trying to get the day-to-day things under control, put food on the table, that we forget or don't have enough time or bandwidth to think about our lives and how precious the people and things and experiences that we have are. It often takes something really big, some sort of a big loss, to shake us up and get us to think about things. So before starting this podcast, if you would like to just stop the podcast for a second and think about 5 or 10 things or people in your life and savor them. And when you're ready, come back and let's listen to Brittni's story. Who amongst us hasn't suffered some sort of tragedy or trauma in our lives? Some of us, like Brittni, are incredible teachers, however, on how to remain open to the beautiful things that can come in to fill these voids, often or always in unexpected ways, and how these events, in the end, can actually change us for the better. All right, hello everybody in Suckville. Today I'm here with Brittni Staufer, who is actually my cousin, and she is an English language learner. She's waving right now. Middle school teacher from Erie, Colorado. She loves to sing, write, read, work out, travel, and spend time with her husband and fur babies. How are you today, Brittni?
I'm good. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm living the dream here in hot and sweaty Italy. Just a note, in case you're one of those people who's like, hot and sweaty, Silva, it's winter. We actually recorded this podcast back in June. But anyways, back to Brittni. So, as everybody in Suckville already knows, who is we? It's just one person. I invite people on the podcast to talk about difficulties that they've been through in their lives. What is the experience that we have you on here talking about today, Miss Brittni?
So, we could say that I am part of the group ACOA, which stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics. When I was growing up, both of my parents were alcoholics, and they both, at least my father, dealt with, I believe, substance abuse with prescription medication as well. And so I have now experienced in my life essentially taking care of both of my parents. And at this point, my mom is now sober, which is amazing. She's been sober, for, I believe, 11 years.
And she's like a super aggro swimmer lady.
Oh my gosh, yeah. She's a world champion swimmer. She's in better shape than I am and I will ever be. And she's incredible. Yes. She's a huge, huge, huge inspiration. So my mom has been sober now, but unfortunately my dad passed away in 2011. Big part due to alcoholism and his substance abuse as well. You know, our family suffered a great loss when our grandmother passed away. Your namesake, Grandma Silva.
Grandma Silva.
And I think that, that really was really, really hard for my dad. You know, one of the first real traumatic things that happened to him, and he didn't know how to cope with it.
Yeah. And that happened in 1996. 1996. I always get the year wrong.
I think it was like 1992 because I was only like 4-ish years old.
My mom's probably shaking her head right now. Like, come on, Zola.
I know. Well, I don't know. I know. The same thing with my mom and like how long she's been sober. I'm like, I think 12 years.
Numbers, ew.
I teach English, not math. So,
but anyways, it was the 90s. It was the early 90s.
yes. So, I think that what ended up happening with my dad was he kind of drank away his pain and his sorrow. And instead of getting, therapy and getting help, long story short, he made some bad decisions and some other things kind of got in his way. But when I was a senior in high school, he called me and told me that he was homeless. And, that was really hard to hear because I was 17 years old. And
what did you feel like in that moment? Like, what were you what was going through your head when your dad told you that?
It's hard to put it into words because he had a townhouse that I had grown up in since I was in like first grade. Yeah. And, he told me that he lost that house, that he had to file for bankruptcy and they took it away. And that summer, he told me that he was kind of like in and out of places, like he was trying to find a new apartment. So I didn't really think too much of it. But, by the time October rolled around, it starts to get cold in Colorado. And so when he told me that over the summer, he was staying with friends from time to time, but then he also told me that he was, just camping out next to like a Chatfield reservoir and like next to rivers and things, like sleeping in a tent. And I was just kind of shocked because, when you're in high school, everything revolves around you, like as a high schooler, you don't really think about like what other people are going through. And,
yeah. Hormones.
Yeah. It's like, like you just don't really think about other people. And so, when he told me this, it was kind of like this shock. He was like, well, it is what it is sort of thing. And I had asked him what he wanted for his birthday and we were going to get together and get lunch. And he told me that he needed shoes because the shoes that he had weren't warm enough. And I think that's when it started to kick in that like, this is a more serious thing. My mom, she was remarried and I lived with her most of the time. I told her what was going on. And what we ended up doing was we put him in a hotel for a week and we ended up giving him one of our bikes. And then we did some research and we found some homeless shelters. And so, yeah, when I was 17 years old, I picked my dad up at a park that I used to go to with him when I was a kid and drove him to a homeless shelter.
I cannot imagine having to do that as a 17-year-old. I mean, you are a pretty strong human being, my cousin dear.
Thank you. Yeah, it was surreal because, I'm living this life with my mom and my stepdad. And then there's this whole other life of my dad. And, he would call me and I would go and pick him up by the homeless shelter and we'd go to lunch and I would, buy him lunch and then I would drop him back off. And it was just like such a strange, like out of body experience because then I would like go home to my house, like with my mom and then like go to school the next day,
Because you
were
a 17-year-old, right?
Yeah. And like nobody really knew this sort of other side of me. And that was really tough. And, he was in and out of homeless shelters for a few years. At one point when I was a freshman in high school, he was able to get an apartment again for a year.
I remember that.
which was
We
great.
were all like, oh, Shawn's getting his act together. No.
Totally. You know, he was there for about a year and it was just a 1-bedroom, but I mean, that's okay. Like I would come and visit and I'd like sleep on the couch
I live in
or
a studio. Whenever my guests come over, they get to snuggle with me or like sleep on the floor. That's the two options.
so it was awesome. I was just excited, you know, to have a place where we could hang out again. Like that was our relationship, was that, you know, we were able to just hang out. Like, you know, when I was a kid, we would go to Rosemary Cafe and I would order chicken fried steak every time because I loved it. And we would just talk. You know, he really listened. So like I mentioned, both my parents were alcoholics. Well, my dad was very much open. Like everybody knew, like, oh, he's got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and people were kind of in and out of his life because it's like this sort of roller coaster of like, he would be doing great and then all hell would break loose. And then like things would be great again. And my mom, she was much more of a closeted alcoholic. Like nobody really knew that she had a problem.
That's true.
But she did a really good job of kind of playing that role of like happy life. Like we travel and we go to these nice places and we have nice things. But when I was young, I mean, she was in an abusive relationship. It was really scary. And both of them drank. And when they drank, they got verbal and they got physical with each other. And I remember when I was young, I would go to my dad's and I'd feel really safe with my dad. And I'd feel like he was really listening to me. And I would worry about my mom and is my mom okay? And then I would go back to my mom's house and then I would worry about my dad, you know, like, is my dad okay? Like he's lonely. He misses his mom. He's really depressed.
That's so much responsibility for a kid.
Yeah. You know, I really did. I felt like I had to take care of my parents. You know, as long as I was there, then like nothing bad would happen. I mentioned ACOA, so Adult Child of Alcoholics. There's books about it that I discovered when I got older. And a lot of what we feel is shame and guilt. There's also a book called Perfect Daughters, and it's all about how you try to be perfect, you try to control everything in your environment so that you have some sort of stability because everything else around you is falling apart.
I mean, like, how did you deal with all of that stress as a teenager of like having to worry about your own parents?
So when I was like little, like in elementary school, I was the awkward kid who like sang to themselves on the playground. I loved school. I felt safe at school. I felt happy at school. I was the teacher's pet. I was number one in everything. You know, I was a swimmer. I was a singer. Like,
Interesting that you decided to become a teacher.
I know. Isn't that so weird?
Your dad, Uncle Shawn, was a teacher.
Yeah, my dad was a teacher. We've got tons of like swim coaches and swim teachers and then regular teachers. My mom's grandma was a teacher and your mom was a teacher.
Yeah.
Like,
you are so right. What is like up with us? We want to teach everyone.
It's crazy. But, you know, I've always kind of said like there's two paths, being this like goody two shoes almost. Everybody, like, I want everyone to love me. And then there's the other path of this black hole, and I can do drugs and I can seek negative attention from men. And I've just always been like, I wanted that positive attention. I wanted the accolades and the atta girls. I craved that because I wasn't getting that at home. My mom was able to get out of that abusive relationship. We moved in 5th grade. And so I kind of like told myself, like when we moved, that I was going to be this new person. And I was going to kind of like leave all that like sort of drama and trauma behind me. But then, you know, things just kind of got worse. It's like they really escalated for both my parents. My mom, when I went to college, she she was really, really depressed. She was really, really lonely. You know, I'm an only child. I'm her only child.
Empty nest syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I kind of was on this, I'm going to college. Like, I'm not taking care of my parents anymore, but always still kind of in the back of my mind, I'm worrying about my parents. And I had mentioned that, you know, my dad got that apartment back. But then after only a year, he lost it again. You know, he was in and out of these different shelters. There was one shelter that he went to where he had to take Antabuse, which is a medication that you take so that if you have any alcohol or any substances, it makes you like violently ill.
Oh my.
And so we were doing really well at that point because he had been sober, because he had to be. My last year of college, I was student teaching. He was substitute teaching, and he was like, "Oh, I'm subbing PE today. Like, it's so much fun just to like get paid to like throw balls at kids." And, like, you know, like, it was really funny.
He was a funny guy.
He really was.
A lot of fun, for sure.
I know. And like, that's what's so hard is that, like, you know, when your parents have a problem, it's easy to kind of push down the bad stuff, right? And think about like the good times. But then on the other hand, it's like, you don't know if it's going to be a great day. Are they going to be sober? Is this going to be a lot of fun? You don't know what you're walking into sometimes.
Yeah. It's like total uncertainty.
Totally. And you need this sort of like stability to ground you. And when both of your parents have a problem, there is no stability. You're finding stability through your friends. You're finding stability through, I had a high school boyfriend that I was with throughout high school and college, and he was like the only stable thing that I had in my life. And then we broke up, and it was like, oh my God, like, who am I? What do I do? You know, I don't know what happened exactly, but that last year of my dad's life, it was 2011, and I graduated from college, and I was really upset because he did not come to my college graduation. We were texting, and he didn't have a car, so he had to take the bus from Denver up to Boulder to come to my graduation, and I had 3 graduations.
Dang, girl.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of a big deal. No big deal.
I know. They told me before I interviewed you. They were like, she's a pretty big deal. Get ready.
But I had there were 3 chances.
Yeah.
Is my point, is that there were 3 chances. He could have come to one of them. He sends me this picture. He looks all nice. He's got these flowers, and he's just sitting on a bench, like all like sad. And he tells me like that the buses aren't running that day. And, you know, this is before like Uber. This is before anything like that. But also, like, my mom was driving through Denver to get to my graduation. My mom could have picked him up. Like, there were lots of ways. So whatever happened that day, he didn't make it. And I was really upset, you know, because like you had mentioned, I was going to be a teacher, and we had that connection. I had just started dating my now husband, and
hi, Aaron.
You know, he had never met my dad, and Aaron and I started dating in like February, and, you know, this was May. And so like, it was very fresh into the relationship, and Aaron could see how upset I was about it. And, you know, I was kind of the last person who was really, besides our Uncle Brian, who was paying for my dad's phone at that time. And I know that your mom was, you know, still supportive too, but I just kind of felt like everybody was kind of done with him. Like, they had all kind of like, it was like the last straw, you know, like, how many times can we deal with him? And I was like one of the last people to really be holding on. And I was so upset with him that I refused to see him. We always went to the Renaissance Festival for Father's Day, and I refused to see him that year for Father's Day because I was mad. And then in October, he turned 50, and I refused to see him for his birthday. And then 2 weeks later, he was killed.
Yeah.
You know, he called me the night before he died, and I never called him back.
Brittni.
I dealt with a lot of, if I would have answered, would things be different? And, the answer is no. Like, the answer is, has nothing to do with me. He made his own decisions.
Last time I saw him was at my wedding reception in 2010.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole
other can of tuna.
Yeah.
Can of worms. Whatever. I'm losing my English expressions. So yes, it's a whole other can of tuna. Who says that? A whole can of tuna fish worm sandwiches.
Sounds really good.
Oh, Brittni, I can't believe all that you've been through, and you're just such a sweet, kind, warm person. I know you've been in therapy for like how long now?
My whole life. I don't know.
Yeah, therapy's good for everyone, really.
Well, ironically, I was just doing therapy before this, and because, Father's Day was yesterday, and I always have kind of a hard time. My dad was such a feeler. He really, really was, but like he only shared feelings when he was drunk, or like when he was with family and friends. Like, he didn't ever get like professional help. And I think that is so important, especially when you lose your parent in a traumatic way. Like our grandma Silva's death was not,
because grandma died in a car crash.
yeah, it was not expected. And, then ironically, like, then my dad dies in a car accident of sorts. That night, he was not sleeping in a shelter for whatever reason. He was sleeping under a tree with two friends. There was a runaway stolen car, and they were driving from the police. And the park where they were at is kind of like a semicircle, and instead of going around the semicircle, they went right through the park, and they killed my dad, I would assume, instantly, and his two friends survived with minimal injuries. Then the people who hit him got out and ran away, and we still have no idea who did it.
It still just hits me like, I can't believe it's what really happened.
Well, and what's ironic is that literally 6 months later, they put up a fence. I can only laugh about it now, right? Because it's just like, if that fucking fence was there, then this never would have happened.
That's the weirdest, darkest humor, but seriously.
Right? Like, and I don't know if they put up the fence because of what happened, and like, because it was a popular place for like homeless people to hang out and sleep. But yeah, I got a phone call at like 4 a.m, and my mom and I had to go down to the hospital and identify his body. And I don't know how morbid this is, but like literally, like the last time I saw my dad's face, like he was in a body bag. You will never get that image out of your mind.
No, I imagine not.
It was really, really hard to kind of deal with that unresolved guilt of, not calling him back and not mending our relationship before he passed, and feeling like I was, the only one there for him. And then even I wasn't there anymore. And just how alone he must have felt, and how strong the addiction must have been to not be able to get out. My mom always says, now since she's been sober, she says that when you're an alcoholic, you're either going to end up sober or you're going to end up dead. And my mom ended up sober and my dad ended up dead. And, it was all over like the news. And, I just remember telling them that at least I didn't have to worry anymore about him. I'd never want my dad to die, obviously, but like that worry and that fear that I had carried since I was a child was just debilitating.
Yeah.
At that point, my mom had been sober for at least a year, if not longer. And it was almost kind of just like the end of an era, if that makes sense.
It was kind of a turning point in a way.
Yeah, it was really, really hard and really, really awful. And like, I would never wish that upon anyone. But at the same time, like it made me who I am today. It made me really, really aware of other people's struggles and looking differently at like homeless people, that they're not like just these bums begging for money, but like a lot of them have mental health issues. A lot of them have substance abuse issues. And like, that's someone's family member, you know?
Yeah, and I've unfortunately, I think that America has a big problem because there's so many people that are homeless. And at least the last time that I was back in the United States too, which was in like November, December, I was really struck by how many homeless people there were. I mean, there always have been, but I was like really blown away and really like disturbed, you know?
Well, and you think about too, we just had this, well, still have this global pandemic and like this like stay at home order.
Yeah.
Well, how do you stay at home when you don't have a home?
Where do they go?
Right. You know, I just look differently now at when I see somebody on the side of the road begging. Like I used to feel so awkward, like don't make eye contact and like, you know, like keep driving. And because that's kind of like what you've always been taught. And it's like, these are human beings. Yeah. And, you know, I like to make these like homeless bags so that when I do see someone.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you put in your homeless bags? I think this is a really good thing that people can do for people who are homeless. So
there's all sorts of different kind of like routes that you can take. Like you could do like a personal hygiene route and do like deodorant, shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, toothbrush, sunscreen, sunglasses. Then you can go like a food route and you can put like snacks in there, like some sort of protein item, like beef jerky. Granola bars are good, but always the soft kind, because if you think about, they might not have access to dental care. And so if you're giving them like a hard, crunchy granola bar, that's going to hurt their teeth. I always do like a really big kind of thick like water bottle, like those like smart water bottles that are kind of heavy duty so they can refill them. Gatorade or something with like electrolytes. And then I always put in duct tape because they, you know, like if they are sleeping in a tent or something and they get a hole in their tent, you know, using duct tape to be able to patch it up.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And like, it's just like, it's good for everything. Socks are the number one needed item at homeless shelters. New socks. So not like your old smelly socks that you're giving away or throwing away.
I put gloves in there sometimes too, and like hand warmers.
Or like a hat or a scarf, depending, like, yeah, if it's like winter time. It depends on how much you want to create and how much you want to spend. But, you know, like for me, that's a way to give back and to treat them with humility and to, you know, look them in the eye and tell them that they're important.
Yeah. I always try and at least acknowledge the people that I see on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you had mentioned your wedding. Do you want me to tell that story?
Can if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's important because it's not about just alcohol. Like basically, you know, you got married on his birthday.
I know, which is crazy.
Yeah, so we were going to go to lunch and I went to go pick him up. He was at like this weird house with like not a lot of furniture. Like it was kind of creepy. I don't know what exactly it was, but we were going to get lunch and then he was going to be my date to your wedding. And when I showed up, he was not there mentally. Like there was something going on.
Going on as far as he was totally out of it, or he was under the influence of something?
Like he was like jittery, and he like couldn't like look me in the eye, and he was like moving like kind of weird, like quickly and stuff. And he hurt himself. He did something weird, like, and he had this like massive gash in his leg, and was like, oh, like,
Really?
yeah. And he's like, oh, I went to the doctor and like they gave me Percocet. And I'm like, okay, how many did you take? And he's like, like, I don't, like, trying to talk. It's prescribed. It's okay. And I'm like, okay, Dad. And like, how many are you supposed to take? And when are you supposed to take them? And he's like, I'm supposed to take like 2 every like 6 hours, but like it hurt real bad. So I took like 6. And I'm like, holy shit.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So I tell him, there's absolutely no way you're going to this wedding. I'm not going to do that to my cousin. Like, this is her day. And I was really upset. He ruined our date. We were going to spend all this time with our family, and like, just, it was going to be a really great day and a great night. And I remember leaving his gift there and driving away. And, like in the movies where like the dad is leaving and the kid is like running behind the truck, like, please, Dad, don't go. Like, no. That was like what it was, but the roles were reversed.
Was he running behind the car?
Yeah. He was running after me, like, please don't go. I'm so sorry. And I'm just sobbing.
I'm sorry you went through this on my wedding day.
Well, I think that it has a happy ending. So I'll get to the happy ending. So I think it was all worth it. So then I get to the venue, take out the hair curlers, like slap my face a bit, fix my makeup, pop on out. I'm like, okay, let's do this, like wedding time.
I had no idea you looked really pretty, I remember. So I had no idea. Zero ideas.
So yeah, I just remember like the wedding being like so fun, and our whole family's there, and our Uncle Brian like kind of took me aside, and because they were like, well, where's your dad? And I'm like, oh God. And Uncle Brian's just lovely, lovely human. After your wedding, we all got on our bikes and our dresses and we biked around, right? So Uncle Brian takes this picture of me, and it's so cute. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking cute. I'm wearing a dress. So then I decide to do online dating. That's one of my pictures that I put on my profile as of me in this cute dress at your wedding. And Aaron reaches out to me, and we go on a date, and he tells me that picture of me on the bike was what inspired him to reach out to me. And like, basically that picture turned into like this amazing relationship. It was just like such a cool, like full circle story, because it was a really hard day, and it ended up like working out really, really well, and like has like a happy ending in that sense with my husband.
My marriage didn't last, but now you're married, so that's cool. But my party was flipping awesome.
So fun. I remember that was such a fun wedding. And like I said, like I wouldn't be who I am today. Like I teach English language learners. So I teach kids who are coming from countries that are war torn, that are, they're escaping the cartel, they're being kicked out of their houses, and they're traumatized and they're terrified. And I feel like in my own special way that like I can relate to that trauma. Mm-hmm. I can be that safe place for them, just like school was a safe place for me. I want to be a safe place for those kids.
I have no doubt that you make them feel so safe and loved. I have no doubt at all.
I used to feel really sorry for myself, and I used to think like, why did this happen to me? Why have all these horrible things happened to me? Have I not been through enough? And I realized that like everybody has horrible things that happen to them, and everyone has to overcome something, and that my grief and my trauma is no different than anyone else's. And it's not a comparison game. What you went through and what I went through and what we all go through is all important, and we can all be together in it.
Girl, that is what Live from Sackville is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I've listened to every episode and I've cried in every episode and then I've laughed in every episode and then I'm like, I
Oh,
love Silva.
oh, that makes me so happy.
So I'm honored to
Thank
be
you.
a part of it. I just hope that I can keep my dad alive through stories.
We're keeping Uncle Shawn alive through this too. I feel like he's with us.
Yep, he's banging on his drums, and you mentioned the last time you saw him, he was playing the drums at your little wedding reception thing. Do you remember that?
And running all over the yard. He had no shoes on, I think, and he was telling dirty jokes and making everybody laugh. Like he was being. That's my last memory of him, and I'm really grateful for that.
He's still a good person. He's still a wonderful dad when he was here, and he was, my best friend.
Here's to Uncle Shawn.
Yay.
We'll dedicate this episode to Uncle Shawn.
Love it.
Thank you so much for coming on here and talking to everyone about this, and for being so vulnerable and honest. And
I wouldn't want to talk about it with anyone else but you, because he's your uncle. You know him. Like, it's just, I think that's really special. So,
all right, awesome lady.
Ciao for now, brown cow.
Ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Follow Live from Suckville on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to thank someone or be on a future show, you can send me an email at livefromsuckville@gmail.com or type Live from Suckville into your Google search engine and record me a message directly on the site. A special thanks to all my guests and to Chris Kirby for the amazing theme music. This episode was recorded in my kitchen and produced by yours truly. Until next time.